Fiona Barrows adjusted the collar of her blouse and took a deep breath before knocking on the door of her parents' house. Every year on the first Sunday in May, the Pierce family gathered for a traditional dinner at Uncle Warren's mansion. And every year, Fiona felt the same mixture of irritation and doom. "Come on," she said to herself. "It's just another dinner." The door swung open before she had a chance to knock. Standing on the threshold was Aunt Audrey, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, a pearl necklace around her neck, and the piercing gaze she was famous for in the Human Resources Department at Midwest Logistics. "Fiona, dear, you're late again." Her voice was soft, but Fiona detected the familiar note of disapproval. "Everyone's here." "Hello, Aunt Audrey." "I had a meeting with a client." Fiona tried to make her voice sound casual, even though she had finished the meeting an hour ago and was just delaying the inevitable. "Oh yes, your consultations." Aunt Audrey stepped aside, letting Fiona into the house. "I hope they at least appreciate your time." Fiona silently walked into the spacious living room, where all the family members had already gathered. Her parents, Margaret and Andrew Barrows, sat modestly in the corner. Her mother was a teacher, and her father was a retired engineer. They always felt out of place among their executive relatives. In the center of the living room, as usual, was her cousin Nora, the chief operating officer of Midwest Logistics. At 35, she knew how to command the attention of the room. Her husband Greg, an investment banker, stood next to her with a glass of whiskey, agreeing with her every word. "Fiona! Fiona!" Nora exclaimed with exaggerated joy. "Finally, we're just discussing a new contract with ocean shipping, $20 million over 5 years, and that's just the beginning." "Congratulations," Fiona nodded, heading to the bar to pour herself a glass of wine. "What's new with you? Still giving advice to people who don't know how to run a business?" Nora laughed at her own joke, and several relatives joined in. Fiona ignored the dig. She was used to consulting being considered a job for people who couldn't manage anything themselves in her family. Speaking of not knowing how to manage, Uncle Warren, a tall, gray-haired man with an authoritative voice, chimed in. "Have you heard about the disaster at Archon Solutions? They hired consultants who said all sorts of clever things, and 6 months later, the company lost 30% of its market share." "Bad consulting exists, just like bad management," Fiona replied calmly, taking a sip of wine. "Touché," exclaimed Randall, Nora's younger brother and director of logistics at the family company. "Although, to be honest, I'd rather trust someone with management experience than a theorist." "Not all paths lead to the top of the mountain," said Grandma Eleanor, Warren's mother, a 90-year-old woman who usually remained silent at family gatherings. "Everyone follows their own path." An awkward pause ensued. Grandmother Eleanor rarely intervened in conversations, but when she did, everyone listened. Even Warren showed his mother a respect that was unusual for him. "Of course, Mom," he said, adjusting his tie. "It's just that some paths are more effective than others." The ringing of a bell announced that dinner was served, and everyone headed to the dining room. Fiona found herself sitting between her mother and her cousin Rachel, the only member of the Pierce family with whom she still had a warm relationship. Rachel was a veterinarian and, like Fiona, had little interest in the family business. "How are things really going?" Rachel asked quietly, leaning toward Fiona. "Fine," Fiona smiled. "Lots of work, but it's a good job." "Glad to hear it. Don't pay any attention to Nora, she's just—" "Nora's Nora," Fiona finished for her. "I stopped taking it personally a long time ago." That wasn't entirely true. Her cousin's words still hurt, just as they had 10 years ago when Fiona was just starting out at Phoenix Consulting Group. She remembered her first job, a tiny desk in the corner of the office, covered with reports and analytical memos. She was one of 12 junior consultant assistants, the lowest rung on the company ladder. "Fiona, dear," Aunt Audrey's voice brought her back to the present. "Tell us what you're doing now. Are you still helping someone fill out spreadsheets?" Several people at the table chuckled quietly. "Actually, I'm working on a restructuring project for Greenfield Industries," Fiona replied. "We're analyzing the effectiveness of their operating model." "Oh, that sounds so serious," Nora said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "In practice, you just tell people where to cut staff to save money, right?" "Sometimes downsizing is necessary," Fiona replied. But more often than not, we find ways to reallocate resources to achieve greater efficiency without layoffs. And how long have you been working at this? What's it called? Phoenix? Uncle Warren asked, cutting into his steak. Phoenix Consulting Group, Fiona corrected him. 10 years in September. 10 years, Aunt Audrey exclaimed, exchanging glances with Nora. And you're still a consultant? Senior consultant, Fiona clarified, although that was only part of the truth. Her recent promotion to deputy head of strategic planning remained her little secret. It wasn't that she was deliberately hiding it, she just knew her family wouldn't appreciate it. You know, at your age I was already head of human resources, Aunt Audrey said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. And by the time I was 32, I was already deputy director of operations, Nora chimed in, although, of course, not everyone is cut out to be a leader. Fiona felt her mother tense up beside her. Margaret Barrows always took criticism of her daughter very personally. Fiona has an analytical mind, Margaret interjected gently. She's always loved solving complex problems. Absolutely, Uncle Warren nodded condescendingly. But real success comes to those who make decisions, not just analyze options. Fiona remembered her mentor, Griffin Holt, and his words. A consultant isn't someone who gives advice. It's someone who changes reality for the better. It was this philosophy that attracted her to consulting. The opportunity to see how her ideas transformed companies, making them better and more efficient. What about your personal life? Aunt Audrey suddenly asked, switching to another favorite topic of family dinners. At your age, it's time to start thinking about a family. Fiona struggled to suppress a sigh, as if the evening couldn't get any more predictable. I've been dating Ethan for almost a year, she said, hoping that would be enough information. Oh, yes, your programmer. Nora emphasized the last word as if it were some kind of low-prestige profession. Is he at least a senior developer or whatever they call it these days? He's the technical director at a startup, Fiona replied. And yes, things are going well. They recently secured their first round of investment. Startups are such an unreliable business. Uncle Warren shook his head. 90% of them go bust within the first 3 years. Midwest Logistics was a startup once, Fiona pointed out. Those were different times, Warren said. We were building a real business, not some app. Fiona thought about how little her family understood the modern world of technology. Midwest Logistics was a successful regional company, but in recent years it had fallen behind its competitors who were implementing digital solutions. She had offered her help several times, but her offers had always been rejected. In any case, Aunt Audrey continued, I hope you and Ethan are serious about your relationship. After all, a career is a career, but family is what really matters. Fiona noticed the irony in these words. How many times in recent years had her aunt missed important family events because of work? Even now, she kept glancing at her phone, waiting for messages from her colleagues. We're in no rush, Fiona replied simply. We want to be sure we're ready for this step. Well, don't take too long, Nora interjected. You know, it gets much harder to get pregnant after 35. I'm glad I had Emma and Jacob when I did. Fiona nodded, deciding not to pursue the subject. Her relationship with Ethan was calm and comfortable, without any undue pressure. He understood her dedication to her work, just as she respected his enthusiasm for his projects. Speaking of work, Randall said suddenly, we have a big project coming up with ocean shipping. If all goes well, we could increase our turnover by 40% next year. To Fiona's relief, the conversation shifted to company matters. She listened silently as her relatives discussed new contracts, deals, and appointments. Each of them was eager to show off their achievements, as if it were a silent competition. Between the lines, Fiona picked up on what they weren't saying. Midwest Logistics was facing growing competition. Major players in the market were implementing automation and optimizing processes, while her uncle's company continued to operate largely in the old way. She had heard about efficiency problems in the transportation department, which Randall managed, and about high staff turnover under her Aunt Audrey. But no one spoke about it openly. When dessert was served, Fiona felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. Excused herself, she checked the message. It was her colleague, Alex. The Greenfield report has been approved. The client is thrilled. Griffin wants to see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Fiona couldn't help but smile. The project she had been working on for the last 3 months had been successfully completed. She knew that the results exceeded the client's expectations, and she was proud of her team. Good news? Rachel asked, noticing her smile. Yes, the project has been successfully completed. Fiona nodded. Oh, and how much did you earn for your advice? Nora asked with a slight sneer. Fiona remained silent. Her contract required confidentiality, and she couldn't disclose financial details. But even if she could, she wouldn't have. Her family loved to compare numbers, salaries, bonuses, the value of houses and cars. Enough to pay the bills, she replied curtly. Oh, Fiona, always so secretive. Aunt Audrey shook her head. It's as if we're not family. I just respect my client's privacy, Fiona said. Or maybe you just don't have anything to brag about. Nora muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Fiona felt irritation rising inside her, but she didn't let it show. Years of working in consulting had taught her to remain calm even in the most stressful situations. Everyone has their own priorities, she said in an even voice. For me, it's the quality of my work that matters, not making big statements. Oh, sure, Nora agreed dramatically. Quality over quantity and all that. It's just that some of us can boast about both. Nora, her father Warren warned. What? I'm just saying that everyone has different definitions of success. Nora raised her hands in a defensive gesture. And if Fiona is happy with her position, who are we to judge? But there was clear disapproval in her voice. Fiona remembered how, 10 years ago, when she was just starting her career, Nora already had a management position thanks to her father. She always looked down on Fiona, as if the mere fact of not working for the family company was some kind of flaw. By the way, Randall interjected, apparently deciding to change the subject, we're thinking about expanding our delivery geography, maybe even going international. That's a big step. Warren nodded. But I think we're ready. Our team can handle it. Fiona thought about how unprepared the company was for such an expansion. Their current processes were barely coping with regional transportation, let alone international logistics. But of course, no one asked her opinion. Gradually, dinner came to an end. When everyone moved back to the living room for coffee and brandy, Fiona felt a familiar sense of relief. The most unpleasant part of the evening was over. Her mother sat down next to her on the sofa while the others enthusiastically discussed their summer vacation plans. You look tired, Margaret said quietly, touching her daughter's hand. Is everything okay? Yes, Mom. Just a lot of work lately. Fiona smiled. But good work. I'm proud of you, you know that. Margaret lowered her voice even more. Despite everything they say. Fiona hugged her mother. Margaret had always supported her, even when she didn't fully understand the nature of her work. Unlike the Pierce family, the Barrows never measured success by job titles or salaries. I know, Mom. Thank you. Gradually, the guests began to leave. Fiona said goodbye to everyone, steadfastly enduring a few more condescending comments from Aunt Audrey about how you can change careers at any age if your current one isn't working out. Stepping outside, she took a deep breath of the cool evening air. 10 years ago, when she was just starting out in consulting, she couldn't have imagined how far she would go. Being a senior consultant was just the beginning. Perhaps one day she would show her family that the path she had chosen was no less worthy than their careers at Midwest Logistics. But for now, she was content knowing the value of her work, even if her relatives didn't understand it. Fiona got into her car and headed home, thinking about tomorrow's meeting with Griffin. Maybe there would be good news, or maybe just another interesting project. Either way, she was ready to face tomorrow with the inner strength that her family so often underestimated. 7 years ago, Fiona Barrows walked through the doors of Phoenix Consulting Group for the first time. The glass building in downtown Indianapolis towered over the neighboring buildings, a symbol of prestige and professionalism. For a 25-year-old business analytics graduate, it wasn't just a job, it was her first step toward independence. You're late, Tara McPherson, her immediate supervisor, remarked when Fiona entered the office 3 minutes after her scheduled time. The first rule of consulting is punctuality. Clients pay for every minute. Sorry, traffic, Fiona said hurriedly, placing her bag on the desk assigned to her, a small one in the corner of the open plan office, next to the other junior consultants' desks. Leave early, Tara shrugged, a blonde woman with a sharp gaze and equally sharp manners. We have a meeting with Encore Systems today. Have all the materials ready by 11. And don't forget the coffee. The first few months at Phoenix Consulting Group were a test of strength for Fiona. She was at the bottom of the corporate ladder, an assistant to a junior consultant, one of 12 new hires that year. Their workspace was jokingly referred to as a kindergarten: cramped desks, minimal personal space, and maximum noise. Her responsibilities seemed endless: compiling spreadsheets, gathering data, fact-checking, scheduling meetings, ordering coffee and lunch. It wasn't the job she had dreamed of when she was earning her master's degree, but Fiona knew this was just the beginning. Unlike many of her classmates who chose prestigious banks or family businesses, she deliberately went into consulting. The opportunity to see business from the inside, understand how different companies work, and find solutions to complex problems appealed to her more than a stable but monotonous career in one organization. Burroughs, check these calculations, Tara said, placing a thick folder in front of her. By tomorrow morning. But I need to prepare a presentation for the Western project, Fiona objected cautiously. Want some advice? Tara looked at her with a slight smile. Learn to multitask. In this business, only those who can juggle projects survive. That night, Fiona worked until 3 a.m, first checking the calculations, then preparing the presentation. She knew that Tara was deliberately overloading her with work to test her strength. Many newbies couldn't keep up with the pace and left within the first year. But Fiona wasn't going to give up. Her persistence began to pay off after 6 months. After a successful presentation for a small manufacturing company where she helped optimize purchasing processes, Tara allowed her to conduct a client meeting on her own for the first time. Not bad, Burroughs, Tara said after the meeting, but you get too caught up in the details. Clients want results, not processes. I wanted to show the validity of my recommendations, Fiona replied. Most executives aren't interested in how you came to your conclusions. They want concrete steps and numbers. Tara paused for a moment. Still, not bad for a first try. Coming from Tara, these words sounded like high praise. Fiona realized she was moving in the right direction. But the real turning point came a year after she started working at the company. Phoenix Consulting Group landed a major contract with Vector International, a company specializing in industrial equipment manufacturing. They needed a complete restructuring of their sales department. The project was led by Griffin Holt, founder and CEO of Phoenix Consulting Group. Fiona saw him for the first time at a general meeting about the project. Griffin Holt, a 40-year-old man with piercing gray eyes and a calm, confident voice, made a strong impression on her. He didn't talk about methods or processes, but about value, the value that consultants should bring to their clients. Our job isn't just to give advice, he said at the time. Our job is to see what others don't see and create solutions that really work. Consulting isn't theory, it's change in practice. Fiona listened intently, taking notes. His vision of consulting matched her own. The next day, she was surprised to learn that she had been assigned to a project team, a rare opportunity for a first-year assistant. Tara recommended you, Nate Foster, a senior consultant and team leader, told her. She said you're good with data. We need someone to analyze sales figures for the last 3 years. Fiona threw herself into the project. Nights at the computer, endless spreadsheets, graphs, and reports became her reality. She analyzed not only the numbers, but also the structure of the department, the processes of interaction, and the incentive schemes. In the 3rd week of the project, while reviewing data by region, she noticed a strange pattern. The regions with the least effective sales performance had the highest turnover rate among middle managers. What if it's not about sales itself? Fiona suggested at a team meeting. Look at the correlation with staff turnover. So what? Nate asked. Of course, people are more likely to quit in inefficient departments. Or vice versa, Fiona countered. What if frequent leadership changes lead to instability, which affects results? She prepared additional charts showing how sales changed before and after leadership changes in each region. The pattern was clear. A drop in performance always followed personnel changes. Interesting, Nate acknowledged, studying her calculations. But the root cause could still be the lack of qualifications of the new managers. Possibly, Fiona agreed, but I checked their resumes. Most of them have solid experience. The problem may not be with them, but with how their integration and training are organized. Look at how much time passes between hiring and the first acceptable results, 6 months on average. During that time, many people quit. The room fell silent. No one expected such detailed conclusions from an assistant. "Show me that data," came a voice from the door. Everyone turned around. Griffin Holt was standing in the doorway. Fiona presented her calculations, trying to sound confident despite her nervousness. "So," she concluded, "I believe that the primary problem is not with the sales strategy, but with personnel management and the integration of new managers." Griffin listened carefully, looking over all the graphs and tables. "You see the root of the problem where others see only symptoms," he said finally. "That's a valuable quality for a consultant." From that day on, Fiona became a full member of the team, not just an assistant doing support work. She was put in charge of developing a new onboarding system for sales managers, a task usually assigned to consultants with at least 3 to 4 years of experience. The Vector International project lasted 6 months and was a success. The new hiring and integration system Fiona developed led to a 30% reduction in staff turnover in the first year. "You deserve it," Tara said, as she handed her the promotion to junior consultant, just a year and a half after she started. "But don't think it'll get any easier." Tara was right. The new position meant a new level of responsibility. Now Fiona was leading a small team of assistants and working on several projects at once. Her workdays grew longer and her weekends shorter. But she didn't complain. Each new project brought new knowledge and experience. "Are you ever home?" Mark, one of her colleagues, asked her one Sunday evening when he found her in the office. "Sometimes," Fiona smiled without looking up from her screen. "When I change my clothes." She wasn't exaggerating. Her personal life had practically come to a standstill. Rare dates never developed into anything serious. No man could keep up with her schedule and constant cancellations due to urgent projects. Her apartment had become a place where she only slept and changed clothes. But Fiona considered it a temporary sacrifice on the way to her goal. The next 2 years flew by like one long day filled with projects, meetings, presentations, and endless flights. Fiona worked with companies of all sizes and industries, from small family businesses to large corporations. But regardless of the size of the client, her approach remained the same: find the root of the problem and offer a solution that really works. This quality did not go unnoticed. After a particularly successful project for a pharmaceutical company, where Fiona uncovered hidden problems in the quality control system, Griffin Holt invited her to lunch. "Your work is attracting attention, Miss Barrows," he said, as they sat down at a table in an elegant restaurant near the office. "I particularly like your ability to see beyond the obvious." "Thank you," replied Fiona. "I just try to understand how processes work in reality, not just on paper." "That's exactly what many consultants lack," Griffin nodded. "They get too caught up in theories and methodologies, forgetting that business is done by people, not systems. You have a rare combination of analytical skills and an understanding of the human factor." He paused to take a sip of wine. "I want to offer you the chance to lead a new project. Sunshine Healthcare is a small but fast-growing network of medical clinics. They're facing scaling issues and want to rethink their operating model." Fiona felt her heart beat faster. This was her first independent project as a lead consultant, bypassing the usual step of senior-junior consultant. She couldn't believe her luck. "Why me?" she asked bluntly. "There are consultants in the company with much more experience." Griffin smiled. "Because you see what others don't, and because I believe in you." The Sunshine Health Project was a real test for Fiona. For the first time, she was completely responsible for all aspects of the work, from initial analysis to implementation of recommendations. She assembled a small team of 3 consultants and 2 assistants. They spent the first few weeks doing field research, visiting clinics, observing staff, and talking to patients. Fiona insisted on seeing the real picture, not just studying reports in the office. "Why are we spending so much time observing?" asked one of the consultants on her team. "We could already be drafting our first recommendations based on the data we have." "Because the data shows symptoms, not causes," replied Fiona. "We're looking for the root of the problem." And they found it. Observing the clinic's work, Fiona noticed that the main delays were not where they expected to find them, not at the reception desk or with the doctors, but in the process of preparing the rooms between patient appointments. This aspect had not been given enough attention, and simply optimizing this process reduced patient waiting times by almost 40%. What's more, Fiona suggested revising the entire patient journey, from online booking to follow-up care. Her team developed a new system that not only increased efficiency, but also significantly improved the patient experience. "You exceeded my expectations," said Griffin at the final project presentation, which was attended by the entire Sunshine Healthcare management team. "Your recommendations not only solve current problems, but also lay the foundation for further growth." After this project, Fiona's career began to take off. Her name became well known in professional circles, and clients increasingly asked for her specifically for their projects. Over the next 3 years, she led more than 20 successful restructurings in various industries, from healthcare to manufacturing, retail to financial services. At the same time, she grew within the company. After her success with Sunshine Healthcare, she was officially promoted to senior consultant, and 2 years later, to project manager. Now, dozens of consultants at various levels worked under her leadership. "How do you do it?" Tara, who was now her equal, asked her one day. "It's like you can see right through the companies you work with." "I just look at things without preconceptions," Fiona replied. "Too many consultants come in with ready-made solutions and try to fit the problem to them. I do the opposite." Griffin Holt increasingly involved her in strategic projects and internal meetings of Phoenix Consulting Group's senior management. He saw her not just as a talented consultant, but as a potential leader of the company. "You have a gift, Fiona," he told her after she brilliantly handled a crisis situation with one of their key clients. "You don't just solve problems, you transform companies. That's what makes consulting so valuable." By her 6th year at Phoenix Consulting Group, Fiona was heading up the strategic consulting department, becoming one of the youngest executives at that level in the company's history. She was responsible for more than 50 consultants, and her signature was required for the approval of all major projects. But despite her success and growing influence within the company, Fiona remained in the shadows for the outside world. She rarely spoke at conferences, gave interviews to professional publications, or maintained a blog or social media presence. All her energy was focused on her work, not on creating a public image. "You could be the face of the company," Griffin remarked one day. "Your achievements speak for themselves." "I prefer to let my results speak for me, not PR," Fiona replied. "Besides, anonymity gives me a certain freedom in my work." Griffin nodded understandingly. He appreciated her approach, so unlike the desire for fame and recognition that many consultants had. In just 7 years, Fiona had gone from assistant junior consultant to head of strategy. It was a path that took most people at least 15 years to complete. She achieved this thanks to her unique perspective on problems, her hard work, and her ability to see the root of a problem where others saw only symptoms. Although her family continued to consider her career not a real business but simply consulting, Fiona herself knew the true value of her work. She changed companies for the better, made them more efficient, and helped them grow and develop. And that brought her much more satisfaction than just a high position or public recognition. Griffin Holt saw her as the future of Phoenix Consulting Group. He increasingly consulted with her on strategic issues, involved her in negotiations with major clients, and entrusted her with the most complex and important projects. Fiona had quietly become his right-hand woman, the person whose opinion he relied on completely. "Your approach to consulting," he told her once, "reminds me of myself when I was starting out. The same passion for real change, the same attention to detail, and the same broad strategic vision. It's a rare combination." Fiona pulled up to Uncle Warren's house 10 minutes early, but didn't rush out of the car. The annual Pierce family summer barbecue was another tradition she both looked forward to and dreaded. She looked forward to it because she genuinely loved some of her family members. She dreaded it because she knew there would be comparisons, insinuations, and barbs. Through the windshield, she could see waiters bustling about in the backyard, setting up tables and chairs. Uncle Warren loved to go all out. He even turned family gatherings into displays of his success. Fiona's phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. "Good luck today. Remember, you're awesome no matter what your relatives say." She smiled. Over the past year, Ethan had become well-versed in the intricacies of her family dynamics. "Okay," she said to herself as she got out of the car. "Just get through another day." She was greeted by the sound of laughter and the smell of grilling meat. Uncle Warren's backyard was immaculate, as usual, a perfectly manicured lawn, flowering hydrangea bushes around the perimeter, and a covered patio with tables set up for snacks and drinks. "Fiona!" Rachel called out, raising a glass of wine. "I was starting to think you weren't coming." "And miss Uncle Warren's famous steaks?" Fiona smiled, heading toward her cousin. "No way." Rachel hugged her, and at that moment Fiona noticed her rounded belly. "Rachel, are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted it to be a surprise," Rachel laughed. 4 months. "Alan and I are expecting a girl." "That's amazing," Fiona exclaimed sincerely. "I'm so happy for you." "Here she is," Aunt Audrey's familiar voice rang out. "Our business star." Fiona turned around. Aunt Audrey was standing next to Nora, both with glasses of expensive champagne, both with the same expression of condescending superiority on their faces. "Hello, Aunt Audrey." "Hi, Nora." Fiona tried to make her voice sound casual. "Fiona, dear, have you lost weight?" Aunt Audrey gave her a critical look. "Do you eat properly sometimes? Or are you always at these business lunches?" "I'm fine, thank you," Fiona replied, deciding to ignore the subtext. "How's the Midwest logistics expansion going?" She asked the question deliberately. Over the past few months, she had heard from colleagues in the industry that her uncle's company was facing serious difficulties in its attempts to go international. "Oh, that's wonderful," Aunt Audrey replied too quickly. "Warren is currently discussing a new contract with European partners. We're opening an office in Hamburg soon," Nora added proudly. "I'll be overseeing the European division." "Congratulations," Fiona nodded. "That's a big step." "What's new with you?" Aunt Audrey asked with the same condescending smile. "Still giving advice?" "Same old," Fiona replied simply. "Work, projects, clients." 10 years at the same company and still a consultant," Nora shook her head. "Remarkable stability." "Technically, senior consultant," Fiona corrected, although that hadn't been the case for a long time. "Oh, of course. I'm sorry," Nora apologized dramatically. "Such a significant difference." Fiona felt irritation building inside her, but she didn't show it. It was all too familiar, the same scenario repeating itself year after year. "Fiona, you're 32, Aunt Audrey continued in the tone one might use with a child. "Maybe it's time to think about a real career. There's always room for family at Midwest Logistics." "Thanks, Aunt Audrey, but I like my job," Fiona replied. "Of course," her aunt nodded with exaggerated understanding. "It's just that, consultant isn't exactly a management position." "But we're all managers," Nora added, emphasizing the word all. "And she's just a consultant." Fiona noticed Rachel tense up, ready to defend her, but stopped her with a slight wave of her hand. She didn't need protection. "Different people find satisfaction in different things," she said calmly. "For me, it's not the job title that matters, but the impact I have." Influence," Nora sighed dramatically. "Such an ephemeral concept. Quarterly bonuses and a company car, on the other hand, are very concrete things." "Nora, you promised to show me your new photos from Italy," Rachel interjected, clearly trying to defuse the situation. "Oh, yes!" Nora switched gears instantly. "Greg and I stayed at this wonderful hotel in Florence." Seizing the moment, Fiona moved over to the drinks table. She poured herself a glass of white wine and took a deep breath. It was getting harder and harder not to let them get to her. "Don't take it to heart," her father said from beside her. They just don't understand what you do. Andrew Barrows, a short man with kind eyes and graying hair, put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "I know, Dad," Fiona smiled. "I just wish they would try to understand sometimes." "How's work?" her father asked, changing the subject. "That big project you were talking about?" "We finished it last week. The client is happy," Fiona replied. "How are you doing?" "How are the new neighbors?" They talked for a few more minutes, discussing the usual family news. Fiona was grateful to her father for this island of normality amid the tense family atmosphere. Gradually, all the family members gathered for the barbecue. Uncle Warren, as usual, took his place at the grill, demonstrating his skill at cooking steaks. Today he seemed particularly animated and kept casting strange glances at Fiona that she couldn't quite decipher. When everyone had settled down at the large table on the patio, Uncle Warren tapped his fork on his glass to get everyone's attention. "Family," he began solemnly, "I have some news. As you know, Midwest Logistics is experiencing a period of growth. We are expanding, entering new markets, and this presents new challenges." Fiona noticed Aunt Audrey's shoulders tense, and Nora exchange a quick glance with Randall. "To ensure that we are ready for international expansion," Uncle Warren continued, "the board of directors has decided to conduct a full audit of the company's performance. We have invited one of the leading consulting firms to provide an independent assessment and recommendations." "Which firm?" Fiona asked, suddenly feeling a strange premonition. "Phoenix Consulting Group," Uncle Warren replied, looking directly at her. "Have you heard of them?" Fiona felt the glass almost slip from her hand. Phoenix? Her company was going to consult for the family business? "Yes, of course," she replied, trying to remain calm. "It's a well-known firm in the industry." "Well-known?" Nora snorted. "I'd never even heard of it until yesterday." "Nevertheless," Uncle Warren continued, "they have an excellent reputation in business circles, especially their CEO, Griffin Holt." "Why do we need consultants?" Aunt Audrey interjected, clearly not thrilled with the idea. "We've done just fine all these years without outside advice." "Because the international market is a whole new level of competition," Warren explained patiently. "We need a fresh look at our processes. Phoenix Consulting Group will start work next month. They will conduct a full audit of all our departments and processes." "And how much will that cost?" asked Nora. "Enough," replied Uncle Warren curtly. "But it's an investment in the future of the company." "I hope their consultants are at least more experienced than our Fiona," Aunt Audrey couldn't help saying, casting a condescending glance at her niece. "It's been 10 years and you're still a nobody," Nora added with feigned sympathy. "And now other consultants come in and charge millions for a couple of weeks of advice." Fiona felt the blood rush to her cheeks. She clenched her fists under the table but kept her composure. "I'm sure Phoenix Consulting Group will provide you with valuable recommendations," she said in an even voice. "They really are one of the best in the industry." "How can you be so sure?" Nora asked. "Have you worked with them?" Fiona paused for a moment. Should she reveal her connection to the company now, or wait for a more opportune moment? "I'm familiar with their methodology," she replied evasively. "Sure," Nora rolled her eyes. "All consultants are familiar with each other's methodologies. It's a big secret club of advisors." The conversation moved on to other topics, but Fiona hardly participated. Her thoughts were completely consumed by the news. Phoenix Consulting Group would be auditing Midwest Logistics. That meant that one of her colleagues, possibly even one of her subordinates, would be evaluating the work of her own family. The situation was awkward, to say the least. When dessert was served, Fiona felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. Glancing at the screen, she was surprised to see Griffin Holt's name. He rarely called her on weekends, especially in the evening. "Excuse me, I have to take this," she said, rising from the table. "Of course, dear." Aunt Audrey nodded with feigned kindness. "Work comes first." Fiona moved to a corner of the garden where she couldn't be heard. "Griffin?" she answered. "Is something wrong?" "Fiona, I'm sorry to call at this hour." Griffin's voice sounded unusually solemn. "But I have news that can't wait." "I'm listening," Fiona said, feeling a strange tension. "Today, the board of directors accepted my proposal. I'm retiring at the end of the quarter." Fiona felt the ground slip away from under her feet. Griffin wasn't just her mentor, he was the heart and soul of Phoenix Consulting Group, the man who had built and inspired the company for 2 decades. "That's unexpected," was all she could say. "For many, yes," he said with a smile in his voice. "But not for you, Fiona. We talked about this 2 years ago, remember? I told you I didn't plan on staying in the director's chair until I was old and gray." She remembered that conversation well. It was then that Griffin first hinted that he saw her as his potential successor. But Fiona had taken it as a distant prospect, not something that would happen so soon. "And there's something else," Griffin continued. "The board has unanimously approved you as the new head of Phoenix Consulting Group." Fiona was silent, unable to utter a word. "Head of Phoenix Consulting Group? Her?" "Fiona?" Griffin called. "Are you there?" "Yes, sorry." She finally found her voice. It's a lot to take in." "I understand, but no one deserves this position more than you. In 10 years, you've gone from assistant to one of the company's key executives. Your projects are always the most successful, your clients rave about you, and your team respects you. You embody everything I value in consulting: deep understanding, strategic thinking, and a genuine commitment to results." Fiona felt tears welling up in her eyes. Hearing such praise from someone she respected immensely was incredibly touching. "Thank you, Griffin. It's a great honor. And, of course, the new position comes with commensurate compensation," he continued in a business-like tone. "A 7-figure annual salary plus bonuses and stock options. We'll discuss the details on Monday." A 7-figure income. Fiona repeated the number to herself. She already earned a good salary as a department head, but this was on a whole other level. "Now, about your first project in your new role," Griffin continued. "As you may already know, we've been awarded a contract with Midwest Logistics." "Yes, I just found out about that," Fiona replied, glancing toward the patio where her family continued their casual conversation, unaware of the conversation she was having. "That creates a certain situation." "I am aware of your family ties to the company," Griffin said. "If you think it's a conflict of interest, we can assign the project to another team. But I think you're the best person to do this audit." Fiona thought about it. On the one hand, working with a family company would be emotionally difficult. On the other hand, who knew the weaknesses of Midwest Logistics better than she did? "I'll take on the project," she said firmly. "But I'll need to report my relationship with the company officially, in accordance with our protocols." "Of course," Griffin agreed. "Everything must be transparent. I've already notified Warren Pierce about the change in leadership at our company and that you will be leading the project." Fiona froze. "You told him that you're Fiona Barrows, yes. He didn't mention that you're his niece, and I didn't think it necessary to clarify whether you know each other. It's up to you when and how you disclose that information." Fiona took a deep breath. So Uncle Warren knew she would be leading the audit of his company, but he hadn't mentioned it at dinner. I wonder what he was planning. "When do we start?" she asked. "The preliminary meeting is scheduled for Wednesday," Griffin replied. "I'll send you all the materials tomorrow morning. And Fiona, please accept my sincere congratulations. You deserve this promotion." "Thank you, Griffin, for everything." After ending the call, Fiona stood motionless for a few minutes, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what had just happened. Head of Phoenix Consulting Group, a position many could only dream of, a 7-figure annual salary, and her first project would be auditing her family's company, the very family that had ridiculed her career for all these years. She slowly turned and looked at the patio where her relatives continued their casual conversation. They had no idea that in a few days they would be meeting the new head of Phoenix Consulting Group. With her. The Phoenix Consulting Group office greeted Fiona with its usual atmosphere of concentrated work. Glass partitions, muffled voices, the quiet tapping of keyboards, it all created a unique symphony of business consulting that she had grown so accustomed to over the past 10 years. But today was different. Today, she crossed the threshold of the office with the sign, Fiona Barrows, CEO, on the door for the first time. Alex Rivera, her assistant, was already waiting in the reception area with a tablet and a cup of her favorite coffee. "Good morning, Madam CEO," he smiled slightly, handing her the cup. All the department heads are in the conference room, as you requested. Thanks, Alex. Fiona nodded, taking the coffee. And let's skip the Madam CEO, okay? I'm still the same Fiona. As you wish, he said, opening the door to her office. You have 10 minutes before the meeting. Fiona looked around her new workspace. It was a spacious office with panoramic windows overlooking the Indianapolis Business Center. The minimalist design and functional furniture were all in keeping with the style of Griffin Holt, who preferred practicality over ostentatious luxury. On the desk was a folder with the Midwest Logistics logo. Fiona opened it and scanned the first page, general information about the company she already knew so well. The family business, founded by her uncle Warren Pierce 30 years ago, was now a regional logistics company with ambitions for international expansion. Fiona took a sip of coffee and closed the folder. It was time to get to work. The conference room was filled with Phoenix Consulting Group department heads. When Fiona entered, all conversations stopped. 12 pairs of eyes turned to her, filled with curiosity, respect, and perhaps a hint of doubt. After all, it wasn't every day that a 32-year-old woman became the head of a large consulting firm. Good morning, everyone, Fiona began, taking her place at the head of the table. Thank you for gathering so quickly. As you already know, Griffin Holt has decided to retire, and the board of directors has approved me as the new head of the company. She paused, looking around at the assembled group. Mark Lewinsky, head of financial consulting, nodded slightly to her. They had worked together on several projects, and he had always supported her initiatives. Janet Wong, head of human resources, smiled. It was Fiona who had recommended her for the position 2 years ago. Tara McPherson, her former boss and now head of digital transformation, kept a neutral expression. She had always been reserved in showing her emotions. We have a lot of work to do, so I won't waste time with long speeches, Fiona continued. Our company will continue to develop in the same direction that Griffin set out. But today, I want to discuss a specific project that requires special attention: Midwest Logistics. Fiona activated the projector, and a presentation appeared on the screen. The first slide contained the company logo and key financial figures for the last 3 years. Midwest Logistics is a regional logistics company that is planning to enter the international market. Our task is to conduct a full audit of its efficiency and provide recommendations for optimizing all processes. This project is strategically important to us, so I will be overseeing it personally. Do we have any preliminary information about problem areas? Asked Mark. According to preliminary analysis, Fiona switched slides, the company is facing several key issues: outdated logistics processes, insufficient use of digital technologies, high staff turnover in some departments, and a suboptimal organizational structure. She paused and took a deep breath. There is one more thing I should inform you about. I have family ties with the management of Midwestern Logistics. Warren Pierce, the company's founder and CEO, is my uncle. A quiet murmur swept through the room. Fiona raised her hand to call for silence. I have officially declared this potential conflict of interest, and the board of directors has approved my participation in the project on the condition of complete transparency. However, to avoid even the slightest doubt about the objectivity of the audit, I will not be directly involved in meetings with company management until the final presentation of the results. Who will lead the project on site? Tara asked. We will form a special team, Fiona replied. Alex, please hand out the materials. Alex Rivera distributed folders with documents to everyone present. In these folders, you will find the composition of the project team and a preliminary work plan, Fiona continued. Tara, you will lead the digital infrastructure audit. Mark, your department will handle the financial analysis. Janet, you will assess the effectiveness of human resource management. Daniel, you will be responsible for operational processes and logistics. She switched to a slide showing a detailed work schedule. The preliminary meeting with company management will take place on Wednesday. I will introduce our company and our methodology, but after that, you will be doing all the field work. I will coordinate the process from here and analyze the results. Does Midwestern Logistics Management know about your connections with the company? Asked Daniel Carter, head of operational consulting. The CEO is aware that I will be leading the project, replied Fiona. The rest of the management team will find out at the preliminary meeting. Any other questions? There were many questions about methodology, deadlines, access to information. Fiona answered clearly and to the point, demonstrating complete mastery of the situation. When the meeting ended and the department heads dispersed to their offices, she felt a strange mixture of excitement and anxiety. Everything okay? Alex asked, noticing her thoughtfulness. Yes, I'm just realizing the scale of the work ahead, Fiona replied. Alex, I need you to gather all available information about the managers at Midwest Logistics, professional experience, education, achievements, and, separately, information about the performance of their departments over the last 3 years. Will do, Alex nodded. Looking for anything specific? Correlations between the qualifications of the executives and the performance of the departments, Fiona replied. And Alex, this is confidential information, for my personal analysis only. When her assistant left, Fiona returned to studying the materials on Midwest Logistics. She knew that the upcoming audit would be difficult not only professionally, but also personally for her. Evaluating the work of your own relatives is not the easiest task, especially when those relatives have looked down on you for years. On Wednesday, at exactly 9 in the morning, Fiona entered the headquarters of Midwest Logistics, a 4-story building in the suburbs of Indianapolis. The lobby was decorated in the company's corporate colors, blue and gray. A large portrait of Warren Pierce hung on the wall with the inscription, Founder and Inspiration. Fiona felt a slight tingling in her fingertips, a mixture of excitement and anticipation. Today, her family would see her in her new role as head of Phoenix Consulting Group for the first time. Fiona Barrows, Phoenix Consulting Group, she said at the reception desk. I have a meeting with the company's management. Of course, Miss Barrows, smiled the receptionist. They are waiting for you in the conference room on the 3rd floor. Let me show you the way. On the way to the elevator, Fiona noticed several employees she knew from family gatherings. Their surprised looks told her that the news of her new position had not yet spread throughout the company. The conference room was spacious, with a long table in the middle, and large windows overlooking the parking lot. When Fiona entered, all of Midwestern Logistics senior management was already gathered in the room. Uncle Warren, Aunt Audrey, Nora, Randall, and several other executives whom Fiona knew only by name. Good morning, she greeted the assembled group. Thank you for taking the time for this meeting. She noticed how Aunt Audrey and Nora's faces tensed. Randall looked as if he had seen a ghost. Only Uncle Warren remained unperturbed. Apparently, he was the only one who had been expecting her. Fiona? Aunt Audrey was the first to break the awkward silence. What are you doing here? I represent Phoenix Consulting Group, Fiona replied calmly, taking her place at the head of the table. I understand Warren has informed you about the upcoming performance audit. Yes, but Nora glanced from Fiona to Warren. You work for Phoenix Consulting Group? Fiona Barrows is the new CEO of Phoenix Consulting Group, Warren announced, his voice sounding unusually respectful. Griffin Holt personally recommended her to audit our company. Fiona noticed Nora and Aunt Audrey exchange shocked glances. She opened her briefcase and took out some folders. Let me present our methodology and the plan for the upcoming audit, she said in a businesslike tone. Alex, please hand out the materials. Alex Rivera, who had entered the room behind her, began distributing the folders to those present. As you know, Fiona continued, Midwest Logistics is planning to enter the international market. This is a serious step that requires careful preparation. Our task is to assess the company's readiness for this step and identify areas for improvement. She switched the slide on the projector to show the stages of the work. The audit will be conducted in 4 stages. The first is an analysis of current processes and organizational structure. The second is an assessment of the effectiveness of each department. The third is the identification of bottlenecks and problem areas. The fourth is the development of recommendations for optimization. And who will conduct this audit? Asked Aunt Audrey, clearly still in shock. A team of our best specialists, replied Fiona. Each department will work with a specialist consultant. I will coordinate the team's work and analyze the results, but I will not be directly involved in the day-to-day audit. This will ensure maximum objectivity, given my family ties to the company's management." "Family ties?" Nora sat up straight in her chair. "Are you saying that you'll be judging our work while being a member of the family?" "No, Nora," Fiona replied calmly. "I mean that because of my family ties, I won't be directly evaluating your work. Other members of the team will do that, based solely on objective criteria." "That seems like a clear conflict of interest to me," Aunt Audrey interjected. "Warren, are you sure this is a good idea?" "Phoenix Consulting Group is one of the best consulting firms in the country," Warren replied firmly. "And Fiona, as I just learned, is its director. I trust their professionalism and objectivity." Fiona nodded gratefully to her uncle. She hadn't expected such support from him, especially in public. "To ensure complete transparency, all meetings will be documented, and all conclusions will be based solely on objective data. Our goal is not to criticize the current work, but to identify opportunities for improvement." "And when do you plan to start?" asked Randall, who had been silent until then. "Our team will begin work next Monday," replied Fiona. "We will need access to certain documents and information systems beforehand. A list of the necessary materials is included in the package of documents we gave you." The meeting lasted about another hour. Fiona answered questions, explained the methodology, and clarified details. All the while, she felt the intense gaze of her Aunt Audrey and cousin Nora, which conveyed disbelief, surprise, and perhaps a hint of fear. When the meeting ended and everyone began to leave, Uncle Warren asked Fiona to stay behind. "Impressive," he said when they were alone. "I must admit, I didn't expect my niece to be the CEO of such a company." "I've been with Phoenix Consulting Group for 10 years, Uncle Warren," Fiona replied. "All this time, while you thought my career was frivolous, I was building it step by step. Why didn't you ever tell me about your successes?" His voice sounded genuinely curious. "Would you have listened?" She looked him straight in the eye. "To you and everyone else, I was always just a consultant who gave advice without any real management experience. You were never interested in what I actually did or what results I achieved." Warren nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps you're right. We were too focused on our own achievements, but now that you're going to be auditing our company, won't that cause problems?" "I won't be conducting the audit directly," Fiona repeated. "My colleagues, who are top-notch professionals, will take care of that. And yes, they will be completely objective, even if it means pointing out serious shortcomings in the work of certain departments." "Even if those departments are headed by your relatives?" Warren looked at her intently. "Especially in this case," Fiona replied firmly. "Uncle Warren, you're not hiring us to pat you on the head. You want to enter the international market, and we need to make sure you're ready for that. If we find problems, and there are bound to be some, we'll point them out honestly and openly." Warren looked at her for a long time, then smiled unexpectedly. "You know, you remind me of myself at your age. Same principles, same directness. All right, I trust your professionalism, but be prepared for Audrey and Nora to take some time to accept your new role." "I know," Fiona nodded, "but that won't change our approach." Back at the Phoenix Consulting Group office, Fiona gathered the project team to discuss the details of the upcoming work. Tara McPherson, Mark Levinsky, Janet Wong, and Daniel Carter listened attentively to her instructions. "I want to make this crystal clear," Fiona said. "Despite my family ties to the management of Midwest Logistics, we are conducting a completely objective audit. No leniency, no omissions. If you find problems, and you will find problems, I expect them to be documented and analyzed." "Fiona," Janet began cautiously, "what if some of these problems are directly related to the work of your relatives? Are you prepared for that conclusion?" "Not just prepared," Fiona replied firmly. "I expect them. Based on my preliminary assessment, the main efficiency issues are concentrated in the departments headed by members of the Pierce family." "Are you sure?" Mark asked. "This could create serious tension in your relationship." "I'm sure," Fiona nodded. "And yes, it could affect our relationship. But for me, professional duty is more important than family ties. If Midwest Logistics really wants to successfully enter the international market, The company will have to make serious changes. And that includes evaluating the performance of all managers, including family members. The Phoenix Consulting Group team spent the next 2 weeks at Midwest Logistics, studying documents, processes, management systems, and talking to employees at various levels. Every evening, Fiona received progress reports, analyzed them, and gave further instructions. Gradually, a complete picture emerged. The company, once innovative for its time, had fallen significantly behind its competitors in recent years in terms of technology, management practices, and operational efficiency. Moreover, as Fiona had suspected, the most problematic areas were in the departments headed by her relatives. The Human Resources Department, led by her Aunt Audrey, was characterized by high staff turnover, outdated hiring practices, and a lack of employee development. The Operations Department, headed by Nora, suffered from inefficient processes, low automation, and frequent disruptions in the supply chain. Randall's Logistics Department used outdated software, which led to planning errors and additional costs. Every evening, as she analyzed the new data, Fiona had mixed feelings. On the one hand, she felt professional satisfaction from the accuracy of her preliminary estimates. On the other hand, she was anxious about how her relatives would react to the audit results. One evening, as Fiona was staying late at the office sorting through another stack of reports, there was a knock on her door. "Come in," she said, without looking up from her screen. The door opened, and Griffin Holt walked in, for the first time since handing over his responsibilities. "Griffin!" Fiona stood up to greet her mentor. "I wasn't expecting you." "I thought I'd drop by and see how your first project in your new position is going," he smiled, sitting down opposite her. "Especially considering its nature. If you're referring to family ties, it does create a certain amount of tension," Fiona admitted. "But I'm trying to remain objective. And what does the audit show?" "Exactly what I expected," Fiona sighed. "The company is stuck in the past, outdated processes, low automation, ineffective personnel management, and the most problematic areas are the departments run by my relatives." "That's not surprising," Griffin nodded. "Family businesses often suffer from such problems. Blood ties don't guarantee management talent." "The problem is," Fiona continued, "that my conclusions will be perceived not as professional opinion, but as personal revenge for years of neglect." "Is that so?" Griffin looked at her intently. "No, of course not," Fiona replied confidently. "I'm just seeing the reality of the situation. The company is not ready for international expansion in its current state, and if they want to succeed, they will have to make some serious changes." "Including personnel changes?" Fiona paused for a moment. "Yes, including personnel changes. Some managers are clearly not up to the job." "And you're willing to recommend firing or demoting your own relatives?" Griffin leaned back in his chair, watching her reaction. "I'm willing to recommend what's best for the company," Fiona replied firmly, "even if that means making difficult decisions about members of my own family." Griffin nodded with satisfaction. "That's why I recommended you for the position of head of Phoenix Consulting Group. You see the heart of the problem and aren't afraid to make difficult decisions, even when it comes to your family." "Thank you, Griffin," Fiona said sincerely. "Your trust means a lot to me." When he left, Fiona returned to analyzing the reports. Before her lay irrefutable evidence of the inefficiency of the departments headed by her relatives. The numbers, graphs, and employee reviews all pointed to one thing: if Midwest Logistics wanted to successfully enter the international market, the company needed significant changes. Fiona closed her eyes and imagined the upcoming presentation of the audit results. She saw the faces of her relatives, surprised, indignant, maybe even hostile. But then she imagined what the company would look like after her team's recommendations were implemented: efficient, modern, ready for international expansion. At that moment, she made up her mind. An honest audit was more important than family relationships. She would present the results without embellishment or omission, even if it created tension in the family. After all, it was her professional duty to tell the truth, no matter how unpleasant it might be. The morning of the presentation was surprisingly clear. Fiona woke up before her alarm, feeling a slight tension in her stomach. Today was the day, the culmination of weeks of intense work and, possibly, a turning point in her relationship with her family. She carefully chose her outfit: a strict dark blue suit, a white blouse, and minimal accessories. She pulled her hair back into a neat bun. Restraint and professionalism were what her relatives were supposed to see today. "You look like a general before a decisive battle," Ethan remarked, watching her get ready. "More like a chess player before the final game," Fiona smiled. "It's going to be a tough day." "You'll be fine," he said, hugging her goodbye. "You always are." On the way to the office, Fiona mentally rehearsed her upcoming presentation. Every slide, every figure, every conclusion had been carefully checked. No empty statements, only facts backed up by concrete data. Tara, Mark, Janet, and Daniel, the core of the project team, were already waiting for her in the office. "Is everyone ready?" Fiona asked as she entered the conference room. "Absolutely," Mark nodded. "The presentation is finalized, and all the data has been double-checked." Fiona glanced around the team. Over the past few weeks, these people had become not just colleagues to her, but allies in the difficult task of evaluating a family business. "Thank you all," Fiona said sincerely. "Without your support and expertise, this project would not have been possible. We're just doing our job." Tara shrugged. "So are you." At 11 o'clock, the Phoenix Consulting Group team arrived at the Midwest Logistics headquarters. This time, they headed for the large conference room, which was usually used for board meetings. Fiona noticed that her team had taken one side of the table, leaving the other side for the Midwest Logistics Management. It was a small but symbolic detail, the two teams facing each other. At exactly 11:30, the door opened and the Midwestern Logistics executives entered, led by Warren Pierce. Fiona noticed that Nora looked tense, while Aunt Audrey kept a straight face. Randall seemed slightly nervous, constantly adjusting his tie. Only Uncle Warren remained his usual confident self. "Good afternoon, everyone," Fiona began when everyone had taken their seats. "Thank you for taking the time to attend this meeting. Today, we will present the results of the Midwestern Logistics Performance Audit and our recommendations for process optimization." She activated the presentation, and the first slide appeared on the screen with the logos of both companies. "Over the past 3 weeks, our team has conducted a comprehensive analysis of all aspects of Midwest Logistics operations. We have examined operational processes, financial reporting, human resources policies, and information systems. We have spoken with employees at all levels, from frontline specialists to department heads." Fiona switched slides to show the company's overall structure. "Our goal was not just to assess the current state of affairs, but also to determine the company's readiness for international expansion. I will ask each of my colleagues to present the results for their area, after which I will draw general conclusions and make recommendations." Mark Levinsky was the first to speak, presenting a financial analysis. He presented profitability charts, cost structure, and revenue dynamics. Next, Janet Wong discussed the HR audit, highlighting alarming staff turnover rates, particularly in the department headed by Aunt Audrey. Daniel Carter presented an analysis of operational processes, pointing out critical inefficiencies in the logistics department led by Randall. Finally, Tara McPherson presented an assessment of the digital infrastructure, noting significant technological lag behind competitors, especially in Nora's operations department. All this time, Fiona was closely watching the reactions of Midwestern Logistics management. Uncle Warren kept a neutral expression, occasionally taking notes. Aunt Audrey gradually lost her composure, especially when Janet presented data on the low efficiency of the hiring system. Nora tried several times to interrupt Tara, but each time she stopped when she caught Fiona's gaze. Randall looked increasingly dejected as the problems in his department were revealed. When all the team members had finished their presentations, it was Fiona's turn to present her overall conclusions. "Thank you to my colleagues for their detailed analysis," she began, stepping up to the screen. "Now I would like to present the big picture and our recommendations." She switched slides, showing a matrix of the performance of various departments at Midwest Logistics. As you can see from this matrix, the company as a whole is performing at an average level for its segment. However, there are significant discrepancies between departments. Sales and customer service are performing well, while human resources, operations, and logistics are significantly below industry standards. That's because of the specific nature of our region, Aunt Audrey interjected. We operate in a tight labor market. We took regional specifics into account in our analysis, Fiona calmly objected. And even with this adjustment, the figures remain below average. What's more, your direct competitors operating in the same region are performing significantly better. She switched to a slide showing a comparison with competitors. Harrison Logistics has a staff turnover rate 60% lower than yours. Blue Line processes 30% more orders with the same number of employees. Transglobal spends 40% less on administrative costs, and they all operate in the same region. Those are just numbers, Nora laughed nervously. They don't take service quality into account. According to customer satisfaction surveys we conducted, Fiona countered, switching slides, Midwest Logistics lags behind its competitors in 5 out of 7 key parameters, including on-time delivery and claims handling. A heavy silence hung in the room. Now, about readiness for international expansion, Fiona continued. Based on our analysis, we have concluded that in its current state, Midwest Logistics is not ready to enter the international market. What? Randall exclaimed. We've been preparing for this step for years. Unfortunately, the preparation has been insufficient, Fiona said firmly. The international market requires a much higher level of process organization, technological equipment, and staff qualifications. At this point, an attempt to enter this market is likely to end in failure and significant financial losses. She saw Uncle Warren tense up. International expansion had been his dream for the last few years. However, Fiona continued, switching slides, we have developed a comprehensive transformation plan that will enable Midwest Logistics to prepare for international expansion within a year and a half. A roadmap of changes with specific steps and deadlines appeared on the screen. The plan includes reorganizing the organizational structure, updating information systems, optimizing operational processes, and implementing a new human resources policy. If these measures are successfully implemented, the company will be able to significantly improve its efficiency and be ready for international expansion by the end of next year. And what is the price of this miracle plan? Aunt Audrey asked skeptically. The initial investment will be about $2.5 million, Fiona replied. But in just 6 months, the efficiency gains will generate savings that will cover most of these costs. By the end of the year, you'll be in the black, even without taking into account potential growth in the international market. What exactly does the reorganization of the organizational structure involve? Randall asked cautiously. Fiona sighed deeply. The most difficult part of the presentation had arrived. The reorganization involves changing the structure of several key departments, she began. In particular, we recommend dividing the functions of the operations department into 3 areas: supply management, warehouse management, and quality control. But that's my department, Nora exclaimed. Yes, Fiona confirmed calmly. Currently, the department is too cumbersome and inefficient. The division will allow us to focus on key functions and improve the efficiency of each area. And who do you think should head these new areas? Nora asked defiantly. We recommend appointing managers based on professional competence rather than job hierarchy, Fiona replied. You have several talented middle managers who could successfully lead these areas. So you're suggesting demoting me? Nora almost shouted. I'm suggesting finding a position that best suits your skills, Fiona replied calmly. Perhaps a strategic development advisor, given your deep knowledge of the company. That's ridiculous! Aunt Audrey slammed her palm on the table. Warren, are you going to listen to this nonsense? She's just getting back at us for all those years we told the truth about her career. All eyes turned to Warren Pierce. The founder and CEO of Midwest Logistics slowly rose from his seat. I listened carefully to the entire presentation, he began, and I've reviewed all the materials provided to us. I don't like the conclusions of Phoenix Consulting Group. They are unpleasant and painful. He paused, glancing around at everyone present. But they are correct. The room fell silent. Nora looked at her father with disbelief. Aunt Audrey turned pale. "Warren, you can't be serious," she began. "I can, Audrey," Warren interrupted firmly. "I founded this company 30 years ago and have invested my entire life in it. I will not allow it to stagnate or, worse, collapse in the international market, just because we cannot admit our mistakes." He turned to Fiona. "Please continue. What other changes do you recommend?" Fiona felt a surge of respect for her uncle. Despite his often authoritarian management style, he always knew how to acknowledge the facts, even when they were unpleasant. "In the Human Resources Department, we recommend implementing modern methods of hiring and retaining employees," she continued, glancing at Aunt Audrey. "The current approaches are outdated. We propose creating a position of Director of Personnel Development, which will focus on employee training and career growth." "What about Aunt Audrey?" Randall asked. "We believe her experience would be more valuable in the role of Corporate Culture Advisor," Fiona replied diplomatically. "This is a new position that will play an important role during the transformation period." "So it's another demotion," Aunt Audrey remarked dryly. "It's more of a reorientation to an area where your experience will be most useful," Fiona replied. "What about the logistics department?" Randall asked, clearly understanding where the conversation was going. "The logistics department needs the most serious technological upgrade," replied Fiona. "We recommend implementing modern supply chain management software and reorganizing the planning processes. The head of this department must have strong technical training." "I have that training," Randall objected. "Unfortunately, your resume and test results show that you lack the necessary technical skills," Fiona said gently but firmly. "We recommend that you consider David Chen, your deputy, who has a relevant degree and certifications in modern logistics systems." "That's ridiculous," exclaimed Nora. "You're suggesting replacing the entire management team." "Not the entire team," Fiona replied calmly. "The sales and customer service departments are performing well, and we recommend maintaining their current structure. Furthermore, we are not proposing layoffs, but rather transfers to positions that better match each manager's skills." "And who, in your opinion, should head up the new divisions in the operations department?" asked Aunt Audrey with obvious sarcasm. "You have several promising managers," replied Fiona. "Elisha Ramirez has an excellent track record in supply chain management. John Parker has demonstrated high efficiency in warehouse management, and Michael Wu has a background in quality control. All of them are ready to take on more responsibility." "My subordinates?" Nora was shocked. "You want me to work under my subordinates?" "I want Midwestern Logistics to be an efficient company ready for international expansion," Fiona said firmly. "And that's only possible if everyone is in a position that matches their skills, not their family connections." The presentation continued for about an hour. Fiona outlined all of her recommendations for transforming the company in detail: implementing new information systems, optimizing processes, changing the employee incentive system, and developing a new marketing strategy. Each recommendation was backed up with specific data and efficiency calculations. When the presentation was over, Fiona glanced around the room. "We have a detailed transformation plan with specific steps, deadlines, and responsible parties," she said. "If you decide to work with us, we are ready to start implementing it immediately." "How much will it cost?" Warren asked directly. "The total cost of consulting and implementation." $4 million for 1 year of work, including the implementation of new systems, staff training, and support," Fiona replied. "But in just 6 months, the benefits of the optimization will begin to cover these costs." Warren nodded thoughtfully. "I accept your recommendations," he finally said. "We will reorganize the company according to the proposed plan, and I would like Phoenix Consulting Group to support this process." "Warren!" Aunt Audrey exclaimed. "You can't be serious." "I've already made my decision, Audrey," Warren interrupted firmly. "As the founder and majority shareholder of the company, I have the right to make such decisions, and I have made it." He turned to Fiona. "When can we start?" "We're ready to begin at any time," Fiona replied. "If you agree, we can have the contract ready by the end of the week and start work next Monday." "Excellent," Warren nodded. "I'll sign the contract on Friday." 3 months later, the Pierce family gathered again for their traditional dinner at Warren's house. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Warren looked rejuvenated and energetic. The first results of the transformation of Midwest Logistics were already visible. Efficiency had increased, costs had decreased, and customer satisfaction had improved. Nora, contrary to expectations, had accepted her new role as Strategic Development Advisor and was even beginning to find satisfaction in it. Aunt Audrey was still keeping her distance, but she was gradually settling into her role as Corporate Culture Advisor. Randall had perhaps adapted best of all. He had taken advanced training courses and was now working on the team implementing the new logistics system. When Fiona entered the living room, all conversation stopped for a moment. Then Warren stood up to greet her. "Here's our business star," he said with sincere pride. "Come on in, Fiona. We were just discussing the latest changes in the company." Fiona sensed how the family dynamic had changed. Previously, all the talk had revolved around the achievements of Nora, Randall, and Aunt Audrey. Now the focus was on the results of the transformation of Midwest Logistics and, indirectly, her role in the process. "Tell us about your company," Rachel asked, moving closer. "How do you like being CEO?" In the past, such a question would have been met with sarcastic comments, but now everyone listened attentively. "It's a big responsibility," Fiona replied honestly, "but also very rewarding." Dinner continued in an unusually friendly atmosphere. For the first time in many years, Fiona felt truly accepted by her family. Not just tolerated, but valued and respected. Her opinion was sought, her advice followed, her achievements admired. As the evening drew to a close, Uncle Warren raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, looking around at the gathered guests. "To Fiona, who has proven to all of us that true success is not measured by titles or grand statements, but by real results. We didn't always appreciate your journey, Fiona, and for that I sincerely apologize. But now we see what you've achieved, and we're proud of you." "To Fiona," Rachel echoed, raising her glass. "To Fiona," the others echoed, including, to her surprise, Aunt Audrey and Nora. At that moment, Fiona mentally checked off her imaginary to-do list. Make my family swallow their insults. Done. Of course, she wasn't gloating. Professionals don't do that. But the slight feeling of satisfaction when her haughty Aunt Audrey raised her glass in her honor was definitely worth all the sleepless nights spent on reports. Now that the Pierce family tree had finally recognized her as a full-fledged branch, rather than a useless escape, she could think about her next goal. Maybe acquire a controlling stake in Midwest Logistics? Just kidding, of course. Although, considering the 7-digit figure in her bank account, Fiona smiled at her thoughts. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, but success that makes even those who didn't believe in you better.